Part of the story, I guess, that we're going to look at in this segment is really the expansion of the university in the 1960s into the 1970s, and how the river that we can't see was itself physically kind of being moved around by the planning and the kind of civil engineering for these buildings. That road in the past, you know, was the kind of boundary point, and it still is very much the boundary point for the edge of the campus. We'll see later on the campus has spread much further east, kind of enveloping the other side of Oxford Road. We assume the Cornbrook is running under the car park beneath us. Whether it's got, well, I should imagine it's got a lot of water in at the moment. We've had 2 or 3 days of quite heavy rain, cover of a similar design that we saw on the other side of the car park building, and we assume perhaps this is where the Cornbrook is coming out. So neither of us have actually been down and brave enough to actually go down.
It comes out of where the car park before this was built, and then it sort of does a dogleg to get around this building.
99.99% of people here walking along have no idea that there's a living river beneath us, and as we said, at the moment it's probably got quite a flow of water in. And again, we were speculating the other day about these ideas of daylighting, about bringing these hidden culverted rivers back into kind of view, bringing them to the surface.
You know, at the moment we've got 2 fairly busy roads and a car park, so the ambient sound is traffic. Whereas, you know, if the whole idea of improving the environment by reducing the traffic flow and increasing things like cycling and public transport, then having something like this, perhaps the sound of being at university would change from a low traffic rumble to this idea, well, to this flowing water.
This concrete box is all about control, isn't it? That's the kind of culverting. I think it's about governing the river, whereas perhaps we need to let it live a little bit more.
But there's a sort of philosophical discussion, isn't there? Because obviously you can measure this space metrically and calculate its value and think about how you could optimise that value by building something on it, perhaps. But to change the sound of the experience of being in this space from one of traffic to one of flowing water, how do you quantify? The next building, Arthur Lewis building, is deliberately named after a University of Manchester academic, whereas this building has been renamed after a geographical location, Bridgeford Street.
Designed by professors here at the university, Norman Hanson and Roy Kantarovich. It was named after Roy Kantarovich. The supposition is perhaps that the South African apartheid connections of Hanson and Kantarovich were seen in subsequent decades as rather more problematic. A colleague, Kerry, is going to tell us a bit more about the kind of backstory, I guess, to Arthur Lewis and his connection to the university.
They made a strategic decision to name it after Arthur Lewis, which I think must be part of the overall presentation of the university to the outside world. Rather than it being related to the occupants of the building or the subject areas of the building, it's actually related to the bigger picture of the university and what it wants to say about itself. It is a conscious effort to memorialise University of Manchester academics, alumni within the buildings.
Interesting.
Although it's less about the financial contribution and more about the intellectual contribution.
I think his experience, though, being here too, the fact that he was simultaneously performing his own research, but also thinking about questions of development through engagement with local communities, it would have informed why he did this work and the social import of it. You know, so Manchester would have played that role in it. Lewis would be a scholar who's becoming an activist. and pioneering scholar activist practices here by going out and doing this community work in a place that he's not from, you know?
Yeah.
So building community and networks. Remember being a black scholar on a campus where he would have been one of virtually none.
Yeah.
He's invited by Nkrumah, when Ghana becomes independent, to function as an economic advisor in a newly independent Ghana.
The leaving of Manchester is related to
I would imagine,
the
be
independence
related
movement.
to the independence movements.
We're just coming to the edge of the corner of the Arthur Lewis building, and then we'll be able to see early 19th century legacy, the back of Waterloo Place. All of this around us was kind of built in the early 19th century as kind of housing and kind of small-scale industrial units and stuff, but subsequently the university, particularly in the 1960s, expanded up from Owens College, taking over land, often a bit contentiously through compulsory purchase orders. Areas were condemned by the town hall as kind of slums, and the university was able to gain. Interesting things about hidden rivers and culverts is that kind of what you can't see, what you imagine is beneath our feet, but equally you can kind of imagine what was here from the kind of 60s developments. The mast tower was one of the kind of beacons that identified a university. On the other side of the mast tower, that isn't there now, there was a big ramp that took people up, and you stayed on first floor level to the mast tower, across to the computer building, the Kilburn building, which still links, you can still link across. And then we look the other way up Oxford Road towards the city centre, and what's missing there, what we have to imagine, was a link bridge across Oxford Road, which is again something from the 60s development, linking the precinct centre across Oxford Road to another segment and the chaplaincy.
So a bit like we're saying with Cambridge Street there, it defines the boundaries of the university, or it did do. Obviously it's not there now.
We assume the culvert is running beneath the road here. You've speculated that the subsidence here might be due to the culvert.
And approximately, based on the 1968 plan, the culvert enters the building about a third of the way along.
Yeah.
And we stood about a third of the way along.
But it literally does flow through the building at kind of basement level, so there's some good architectural drawings that show the culvert box through it. All the Cornbrook through the campus is only less than a kind of metre and a half down. It's not a deep kind of trench, so we can't precisely delineate where it's coming out, but we're probably standing on roughly the culvert at the minute.
The culvert should be travelling straight down here according to the plan, and then veer right around. And this building here is on the plan.
Yeah,
so it's obviously pre-68.
Yeah, so this is the kind of Roscoe building that was built primarily to provide teaching spaces. So again, the 60s is part of this big expansion of higher education in Britain. Many more undergraduate students, and the university just needed more lecture theatres. Again, we've turned the corner here, so the Cornbrook weaving and dodging through the campus, and all this was small streets of terraced housing and kind of small industrial units. So the old kind of limit of the university from Owens College days was Oxford Road, and it was really a big 60s push right across a whole nother block of land.
These buildings are colour-coded, aren't they? They're linked together by this turquoise copper colour that, you know, a bit like we're saying about the sound, you know, with the sound of the traffic or the sound of a brook. You've also got this visual referencing.
There's some illustrations, some sketched illustrations from these 1960s plans for actually a lake, kind of where we're standing, quite a big kind of water feature envisioned in this plan, and it's kind of interesting to speculate about whether that would have been fed by the Cornbrook. Again, you can see very well, I think, the master planning of these buildings, how they're set out, the kind of wings come together and they create a kind of picture frame for Whitworth Hall. So I guess what they were hoping for here was that calmingness, I guess, of reflective water in a lake.
But now you've mentioned it, and you can see it on the drawing, but you can also see it in real life, how they have framed the University of Manchester Arch. So all roads lead to the university.
The university and many institutions often consciously or subconsciously turn their back on people who live next door to them, and certainly the University of Manchester. I think, you know, you go up and down Upper Brook Street, it's a blank frontage.
Yeah.
The buildings look this way, they don't look out, they don't invite. The idea, I guess, of trying to link across into kind of local residential communities is very powerful, very, you know, potent idea, but actually facilitating that to get across a dual carriageway.
It's loud, stressful, traffic noise.
So the university buildings act as a real barrier.
Yeah, because we weren't experiencing any of that, just a few metres that way.
It's been rerouted to miss the physics building and then kind of cuts across and basically stops on the kind of curbstones here before kind of continuing out into Ardwick.